Welcome to the Postal Pleasures channel. Today in Viewer Questions episode 2, we're going to answer a couple questions from, and I apologize if I get this name right, Prodromos Andreou, in response to Viewer Questions episode 1. He had a couple of questions, and they were great questions, so we're going to try to answer those today. And the questions are going to be about, do I collect any other philatelic material, anything other as opposed to just stamps? We'll cover that. The other question he had is, do I track my collection, like in any sort of database or any other way? We'll cover that as well. And then I figured I would get into a couple of my more interesting finds. Nothing special, nothing high value, but some of the more interesting stamps to me that I found in the last couple weeks of me sorting through some things. And actually I haven't had a lot of time, so just a couple stamps there that I'll touch on that weren't really worthy of their own video, or maybe you'll tell me they are and I'll dig into more detail. So again, thanks for joining me, and stay tuned as we dig into these topics and answer these questions. By the way, if you're so inclined, please consider subscribing to the channel. The first question was, do I keep a list of my stamp collection? And no, per se, I don't keep a list in a traditional form, either, say, on paper, in a ledger, or in a database, or some people use a spreadsheet in place of a database. I don't use any of the online resources available for that, although just today, when getting ready to make this video, I logged in and created an account on, and I'll pronounce this wrong, Connect, the website that probably many of you use to look up your stamps, and it's actually a fabulous resource. In fact, I think if I was going to use anything, I would use that site. And I'm actually, by trade, I develop databases and I can do web apps and whatnot, but there's a lot of work in creating something, and they already have something that I think suits 80% of my needs, and I have a big a big head of ideas of what I'd put in an app if I was building it. My method of collecting, I'm going to pull out my A box here, is somewhat self-documenting. This may not be in focus, and I don't really intend to get into too much detail, but as I mentioned in other videos, for most worldwide countries, I have them in boxes, maybe alphabetically. So this is a box of just A countries. And when I have too much for a particular country, or so much for a particular country that it's overwhelming the box, that country might get its own box or many boxes, right? So I can always find fairly quickly the right country, if you will. And then within a country, we'll take Australia here. So my first Australian stamp is Scott number 21. I'm using the Scout catalog number here. I've written down at the time I made up the card, and based on the catalog I have, what its catalog price was. So these are all now in Scott number order, and my Michael catalog. So I use Michael catalogs for my German stamps, but otherwise it's Scott numbers. And I'm sure every country has their own favorite stamp books. So wherever you are in the world, if you're dealing with French stamps, there's a couple good catalogs for France. It's going to be, Michael for a lot of Europe. It's going to be Stanley Gibbons for Great Britain, most likely. I haven't bought a lot of those yet. But anyways, we go through. Those aren't documented yet. Essentially, they're self-documenting. I know what I have just by looking at my stamp collection. So moving on to question 2, do I collect any other philatelic items other than, say, just stamps? And he actually mentions first day covers or maximum cards or maxi cards. And honestly, until just recently, I didn't even really know what a maxi card was. But essentially it is it's similar to a first day cover, but the cover that it's on is actually designed to come as close to the image on the stamp as possible, or representative of the image on the stamp as possible, and often the cancel has something to do with the stamp as well, so really you have the maximum likeness across the board. And I'm going to pull down a couple that maybe I was pulling out basically first day covers, and I realized that possibly a couple of these could qualify as maxi cards or maximum cards. So here we have this motor racing one with some Australian motor racing stamps and a cancel first day of issue from Alberta Park, Victoria, with the racing flags. Maybe an expert on maxi cards and in that area of collecting can tell me if this qualifies or not. I think it's certainly borderline. This one here, and I actually don't know the subject, it seems to be some architecture from South Africa. This one I think could be borderline as well. As I see, the cancels also match, the cover matches to a point. So I think a possibility. this one here is a postcard as opposed to a cover, but we have a Gibraltar first day of issue marked by commanding officer of HMS Victory. We have the HMS Victory stamp here, and we have the HMS Victory on this postcard here. So I don't know if this qualifies either, especially being a postcard, but I'm open for information for any of you that may know. Then, on the first day cover portion of things, here's just, I wanted to pull out a first day cover. So I don't focus on either one of these things, but certainly I've accumulated quite a few first day covers. I know a lot of people really don't like them. They've fallen out of favor, at least here in the US. I don't focus on them, but I certainly add them to my collection as I come across them. So that covers those two things, but I collect a lot of other related items. I collect postal stationery and cut squares. Again, I don't focus on them, but I add them to my collection when I find them. Here's some poorly cut squares that have just come to me in accumulations, and I have some full pieces of postal stationery, but I didn't have any handy to throw in the video here. Let's see, what else do we have? So I'm very lucky to have a very supportive local post office, and we're in a small town, so we don't even get a lot of the stamps. But my local post office saves me lots of cool philatelic related items that would normally just end up in the trash. So in this case we have a couple of catalogs, so United States Postal Service catalogs. I bet you can probably get these from the United States Postal Service's website, but these were given to me by the postmaster. So really neat just to have, save these over time. They'll go in a file. The other neat things that probably never get saved, or rarely, right? We shouldn't use the word never. I get a lot of this stuff. So these are basically the top sheet, or I believe top sheet to a stack of booklets, or in this case, a stack of stamps, right? So in this case, it's 100 panes or 2,000 breast cancer research stamps. Catalog numbers, tells you, not to sell them before the date. I think it tells you the total value in some cases, although I don't see that on this, so maybe I don't have the total value here. But basically they're actually supposed to, if you read the fine print here, even before they unwrap the cellophane on this packet, they're supposed to fold this back and count the leaves and make sure that it's not mispacked, right, because that would throw their accounting off. So a really neat thing that they save for me here. And the booklets are pretty much the same thing. What's neat here is I have two from the same stamp, but we have different corner numbers, and I haven't yet learned what that means. So again, if anybody knows what the difference there is, that would be interesting to me. So I had, just a couple examples, but I have a lot of stuff of that nature. The other thing that I collect in addition to that is they also save me counter mats, which are basically like a small poster they sit on the counter that shows the upcoming stamps for the quarter, and then there'll be a duplicate thing in a much larger size, and again, while I'm talking here, I'll be throwing some of these up on the screen as images, but a much larger size that are more of like a wall poster. And they save me those as well on occasion. I didn't pull any out because they're rolled up in tubes for safekeeping right now, but I've got pictures that I pulled out of my collection of pictures that I'll put in here, as I mentioned. So those are really, really neat as well. There's probably nothing I wouldn't keep that's not that's poster related, and in fact, I don't know if I've mentioned this on any videos before, and I can get into this in more detail in the future. I actually own a post office and collect rent from the Postal Service, so that's been a neat recent endeavor in the last few years in my life. So if you might consider that a little bit of extreme stamp collecting, that I am a landlord to the Postal Service. I nearly forgot to mention that one of the other things I collect would be books related to philately. So this is my most recent acquisition. I was inspired to buy this book after receiving some very nice flag canceled covers and cards from a viewer recently, and I can put that video link up now. I didn't know much about them before that, but I find them really, really interesting, so I wanted to buy this book. I believe it's from '75 by Frederick Langford. A little bit of staining on the cover, the way I received it. But it's an older book, and it's certainly not in print anymore, I'm sure, and it is very factual. There's not a lot of extra information in here. It's, this is what they are, this is ones we found so far, this is how to use the catalog, and then you have a catalog. They don't talk prices, they don't talk rarity, but if you wanted to try to complete a collection, at least to the point that was known when this book was printed, this would be the guide you would follow. So I'm not going to get into all the details here, but it's really neat collecting a library of books supporting your collection, because you know what they say, the smart collector always buys the book before the item. So I try to always have a good library for whatever things I'm collecting. So here's the 4 stamps that I mentioned in the beginning of the video that I found in the last couple of weeks of collecting, that I set aside because I found interesting and wanted to find a way to talk about them, but didn't really feel like I was going to do a whole video on the topic. So I'm going to start with these 2 here, as they're pretty simple. We have a 6-cent airmail, and then a 3-cent commemorative Charlotte O'Malley. I'm not sure what the O'Malley part is, if I'm pronouncing that right. So Virgin Islands is the series, is the stamp here, Virgin Islands, and then that's the more specific description. But they're both bullseye cancels, which again I've really just learned a little bit more about in the last few months. You've probably heard me mention them a couple times, and these were just really nice, attractive ones that I had found, which was nice because they had part of the football and part of the circle portion. Too bad I don't have dates, although I see a 28 there. I wonder if that might be 1928, but I'm not sure. It could also be the being that it's in the top half, I'd say it's more likely the day of the month. Next up, we have this pre-cancel Christmas stamp that also has a post-cancel. So this stamp was issued both with this wavy pre-cancel. You see the black line tracing down here to the train, and then coming up in the corner, and a second black line here, here, and here. That's actually a pre-cancel line, and this stamp was issued, as I mentioned, both with those pre-cancel lines and without. But I would not expect to see both the pre-cancel or the post-cancel. I wouldn't expect to see on a pre-cancel. So I'm actually really curious there, anybody that may collect these pre-cancels, to know how common it is to see this. I'm not sure whether it's contemporary use from the stamp when the stamp was new, or whether maybe somebody used this for postage more recently, and maybe that's why it got the post-cancel, because maybe the people at the post office weren't as familiar with this stamp and the fact that those lines are representing a pre-cancel. I'm sure that they would easily slip through today. Now, lastly, I've been working the last couple weeks on some matrons and wildlings. I'm just starting to expand my knowledge of those. I've been putting them aside for years due to the complexity, and I dug out a bunch of each and started sort of breaking them down. And I certainly haven't done all the watermarking I need to do for these wildings. I believe there are 3 different watermarks, and then there's some varieties even within that. And whether it be phosphorescence or, in this case, black graphite bars or lines on the back. And I wasn't looking for this, I wasn't expecting to find it, and I just happened to turn this one over, saw the lines, and I'll show you those now, and had remembered vaguely having read about black graphite lines on the back, and I said, oh, that must be that. So I was really excited to find it because they actually have a fairly high price tag. This is probably the cheapest one that you can have. It's just the halfpence. But even the halfpence has a catalog value in my old catalog that's probably wrong at this point, of $10.50 US cents in my old Scott catalog. So quite a nice premium over what would be a minimum catalog value stamp without those bars. And had this been a higher denomination one, I think they get quite pricey even beyond that. So these were my neat finds. I'd love to have you ask me more questions if you have any, and answer maybe some of the questions I've had here. And would love to hear about maybe any of the graphite bar stamps you've found, or maybe any of the stamps that you've found interesting as of late. Thanks again for watching,